Alright guys, here we go. So practice for the first TNCBA tournament of the year. We're up here on South Holston Lake. It's February 16th, the tournament's February 18th. We have an off-limits period of 1 day. Just to really quickly talk to you about the conditions we've got setting up and what we're kind of thinking for practice here today is, you know, it's been warm this week. Temperatures in the 60s, it's going to get up to 70 today. Very warm night in the 50s last night, but then tomorrow, this evening into tomorrow, heavy rain's coming in, probably an inch of rain, maybe a little bit more. So the water's going to be coming up between what we're seeing today and Saturday, and then a massive cold front there on the backside of that rain. So it's going to be 23 the morning of the tournament, get up to about 50. So those are the conditions we're looking at. We're going to start out looking at some deep stuff today, looking for some schools, some balls of bait. This is that time of year. Right now, just idling out. I've got a water temperature of 50.6. Expect that to maybe drop just a little bit, but if it stays there, we're going to be looking at some shallow stuff too. We're going to go into some of these run-ins where these creeks are coming in, because those should be flowing really good on Saturday. You might be able to find you a good largemouth bite, cranking or chatterbait, something shallow with some of that stain coming in. So we're going to kind of play both things today. We're going to start out, like I said, on some flats, graphing some stuff, looking for balls of bait, looking for some active fish. I've been hearing that the Demiki is getting bites, but it's tough. Fish have seen that a lot here lately, so they're turned off to it in a lot of cases. Unless you find that perfect group of fish that's ready to bite, ready to fire up, you can waste a lot of time in the day. So we're going to be looking at Kitek, Demiki today, a fly, tight lining that gulp minnow, tight lining that fly, but we're also, like I said, we're going to run some creeks and just look and see what the setup's going to be. You know it's going to have a lot of flow coming in on Saturday, but that's the plan right now. We'll keep checking in through the day of practice and see what we can put together and piece together before Saturday's big event. All right, guys. Alright guys, quick mid-morning update here on practice day. Found quite a bit of fish on these flats, a lot of bait out in about 30 to 40 foot of water. Bass around them, but can't get them to react to anything. We've caught 2 on a duck feather fly, just working down 45-degree banks. Did go back in Jacobs Creek just to look at it, see what the water temperature was today. That way we can kind of gauge it on Saturday, when I feel like there's going to be a lot of flow coming in, a lot of dirt and stain, and just it's going to muddy up, which might pull some fish back there if it's warmer. So we can check that here in a little bit. We're going to focus in on some more banks like what's here behind me, these steeper bluff banks, 45-degree banks. Focus a little bit more on the fly here for a little while, jump back out and check a few more areas where there should be some fish out deep. But right now it's definitely been a more, well, I mean, it's only 2 bites, but there's been some bites up shallow, or at least on these 45-degree banks, whereas we can't get anything to react to the Demiki or the Kitek out deep. So that's how we're going to kind of keep progressing through the day. We'll stop again here in a little bit, update you again around midday, but that's the plan for right now. Focus on kind of tight lining, maybe some Kitek down these steeper banks, and see if we can find some more consistent bites. Even though they might be smaller, get some consistent bites, look for a limit. guys, so mid-afternoon update here. It's been super slow today. We kind of left the area of the lake there between 421 and Obnob, where we had seen a lot of bait, seen a lot of fish, marked a lot of stuff on the graph, got our couple bites. We haven't had any more bites since then, since we came down the lake. We found a couple creeks that were warmer than what we find on the main lake. That's a little bit promising for Saturday, so may go back and check those with the rain coming in and give those a quick check on Saturday. But right now I'm getting ready to leave this lower end of the lake and head back up towards Observation Knob, kind of between 421, the Jacobs Creek area, between 421 and Obnob, and kind of see if I can figure out a little bit more there, dial something in. But that definitely seems where the most bait has been at, where we saw the most life. So I'm kind of done with this lower end for right now, and I just want to head back up there and see if we can dial that in, see if it disappears in the afternoon, see how that bait changes up. But that's where we're going to head now. Again, we've been throwing some Kitech and some tight line. Crockett and Gabbard said that they caught some on a Kitech. That's the only thing they've seemed to have gotten bit on. So may throw that on some bluffs some more. I'll throw the Kitech, Dad'll throw the fly, and just see if we can dial anything in back up towards Obnob and towards Painters Creek. All right, guys. Alright guys, here we go. So game plan for today as we get started. Honor start 7 a.m. first cast. We've got about 5 minutes here. We're going to start out deep, fish for some around those deeper bait balls, Kitech, Demiki. Dad'll probably sling a little bit of silver buddy around the edge of this flat. And then later on in the day, we're going to kind of start to progress more to the tight line, focusing on the bluffs, the 45s, and at the very end, since we had a lot of rain and there's a lot of inflow, stain, a lot of that stuff, let that sun warm it up, go run some creeks with some crankbait, see if we can't find some largemouth that have pushed up shallow. But that's the game plan, so it's either going to work or it ain't. We'll make some adjustments, tell you all about it as we go. All right, guys, so as we started out there on that main flat and we worked our way back into this pocket, you know, the flat didn't produce anything for us. We saw some stuff out there, not near as much as we had seen on the practice day, but as we made our way on into this pocket where we had caught a couple on the duck feather fly, we started seeing some fish moving around in the middle of the pocket, saw a little bit on these breaks. Dad catches one here pretty quickly on the duck feather fly, which gives us some confidence to keep kind of pushing back in here, pushing back a little bit further. So we push back further than we did on Thursday, and you can see there's a point there in the kind of the background of this shot here on the left. Once we made it to that point where this pocket kind of split and it opened up a little bit, the bait was loaded and we started seeing fish moving through the bait, feeding. They were actively going after these bait fish. And the other thing that I think helped in that case is there was some stained water here. And you're going to see here in a minute that as we push back after catching this first one on the duck feather fly, we get bit by dropping a Kitech on them. And the stained water that was back in this pocket allowed us to get over top of these fish, get closer to these fish, whereas people that were fishing in clearer water were having to stay off of them. Pope and Olinger, who won the tournament, they were having to make really, really long casts to their fish, and they were really having to
think about not spooking them and keep in mind their distance and their orientation to those fish. We were able to get right over top of these fish, and it was actually kind of hard to get them to bite casting to them, and I think that was a little bit because of the stain, but also because of so much bait being present. I did catch a couple casting to him. One of our better fish came from casting to him. But if you'll see there, and Dad'll unhook one here again in a minute, and you'll get to see it. One change that we made is with that 2.8 Kitech, we typically throw the chartreuse electric blue. I picked up a white one to get a little bit more of a little bit more flash, a little bit more glow there in that stained water. Because I like a white, it's going to show up a lot, and it's going to reflect a lot of light that's penetrating into that water. You don't have as much light penetrating, so I don't want anything absorbing that light. That white's going to reflect a little more light than a darker color. But Dad took that chartreuse electric blue and dipped the whole thing into Spike It. So the whole bait was chartreuse, super bright. And I think that really helped him with the bites that he got. And you can see here things got chaotic sometimes. These fish were feeding up so heavy and so hard through those bait balls. And so he dips the whole thing in Spike It to give it some more color in that stain. I did switch up the head. So while I was throwing a white Kitech, I switched up from the just typical fat head, still throwing the 3/8 ounce head, that VMC Moon Eye, but I switched up to the head that has chartreuse on the head instead of just that shad pattern fat head. And I really do think that little bit of chartreuse on mine, and then of course a lot of chartreuse on his, was a big deal in this stained water. So as we worked back in here, again, we've already talked about kind of the plan was to switch up gears, check out these bait balls, and go to tight line on these 45s, and then go run creeks. But really, we found so much activity, we ended up staying here until noon, and we were able to fill our limit and cull a couple times back here. But again, those bait balls and finding those active fish was really, really key for us, and making those small changes to the color of the bait and getting some chartreuse on there to make it pop and get these fish to bite.
That's the smallest one for the day. Oh my God. God, jump down.
Now, later on in the day, we still stuck to our game plan as far as going back in these creeks and seeing if we could find some fish, some big largemouth or even some big smallmouth that had pushed up in these creeks where we had all of that inflow coming in. We had good stained water. So we picked up a crankbait, headed back in there, checked those out. But good thing that we went in there earlier on Thursday to check it, and that was the point of going back there, was to see what the temperature was on Thursday compared to Saturday. The temperature had dropped 6 degrees. Where that rain came in a day later, it wasn't a warm rain anymore. It was cold and dropped that water temperature. So we checked one creek, saw that, got out of there, went and tightlined a little bit more, but after that flurry in the morning, everything was done. But overall, we ended up in second place, 14 pounds. Great start to the year. We typically struggle here in the first tournament, but a really good way to get our feet set underneath us and head into this season with a good start.